Hi everyone, this is Howard. Welcome to another StarTalk Tuesday, this Tuesday being June 9th, 2020. Now, it's not often that I begin the day by talking about what happened in the past, but I do want to illustrate something that you may have missed this morning. So I'm going to go backward in time. Of course, we're looking, right now it's around 20 minutes after 2 on June 9th. Let's go backward in time just to see what we missed this morning. So I'm going to take back the clock. And there we go. Okay, so around 5 o'clock in the morning, clearly the highlight of our sky here is that we see, well, if you're paying attention to the larger view, you can see 3 planets and the moon. Now, you can clearly see that there's a nice little solar system click going on over here. What we've got is Jupiter and Saturn and the moon. And they're clumped together in a nice, beautiful little group. And that was this morning. We had a bright, beautiful triangulation here between Jupiter, Saturn, and a waning gibbous moon here. So what we're looking at is a moon. Let's get a little bit closer. What you're looking at is a moon that's clearly not full. You might ask, the moon is always on its way to becoming full, or the opposite of full, what we call new. And so we've passed the full moon and are now working our way towards becoming a new moon. So here is the Terminator today, and then the next day the Terminator will be there, and the next day it'll be there, and the next day it'll be there, and then eventually you start to look at a tiny little slice of the moon, and it looks like a left-hand parenthesis. So as you look at the left-hand parenthesis of the moon, it will always be rising just before the sunrise. And that's a waning moon. So what we're seeing is this waning gibbous phase where it's not quite a crescent, it's not quite full, it's this sort of weird elliptical shape. Now, that's this morning, and we missed that. So we had this beautiful sort of solar system alignment of objects, and for those of us that didn't get up early in the morning to see it, oh well, boo-hoo. Now, there's some other things coming up that are related to the moon and the planets. Of course, as you see, there's Mars over there. So what I want to show you is what's going to happen in 5 days. So now what I'm going to do is just change the date here. We're going to go over here to this side. I'm going to change the date to the 13th. So this is early in the morning on June 9th. What I'm going to do is change the date. There you can see what happens on the 10th. You can see the moon shifting. That's how far it moves in 24 hours, and we'll move it another 24 hours. And there it goes. And if you're paying attention, you'll also notice that the sky appears to shift. And that's the amount of shift that occurs each day as the Earth moves around the sun. So everything shifts a little bit from the east to the west. So watch, as we go from the 11th to the 12th, not only does the moon move, but everything moves. And there's a little click. And it's like the Earth is the arm moving around the clock, but we're oblivious to our own motion, so it looks like the numbers go flying by, and those are the stars and the constellations and the galaxy, everything visible in the sky as the Earth rotates on its axis and then also subsequently moves around the sun. So we're going to give the Earth, or we're going to give the sky another click, and there is the 13th. So on June 13th, we'll get rid of this now, at 5:30 in the morning, again, for early risers now, what we see is a beautiful arrangement of now, well, the moon is paying its respects to Mars. And on this particular day, we're not looking at a waning gibbous moon. Today we're looking at, well, one of the corners of the moon, so to speak, its phases. This is the last quarter. So between what I call the 4 corners or the 4 points is full moon, new moon, first quarter, last quarter. And this is the last quarter. And you can imagine that the moon from this phase will diminish and lose a little bit more. That Terminator will shift in this direction, and eventually it starts to look like a left-hand parenthesis, and it starts to look more and more like a fingernail clipping, and then eventually becomes the new moon. And that's the full lunar cycle. And what you'll begin with is a tiny little crescent on this side. You get the right-hand parenthesis setting right after sunset, and that's when you start to see what becomes a waxing gibbous moon, or waxing moon, and becomes certainly gibbous, and then ultimately becomes full again, and that's the full lunar cycle. So June 13th, we get to see Mars and the moon in the early morning sky. This is around 5 o'clock in the morning. Some of us might be wondering, what's the point of getting up so early? I would say, well, clearly you could see some pretty spectacular things in the sky. Now, that's not all that there is. Unfortunately, we're in a transitional phase, and I got to be quite honest with you. This is June now, and if anybody has paid any attention to the weather that we've had lately, we've been just completely clouded over for almost 3 days now. So all of this may be moot. It could be that we just simply can't see things. But for the opportunistic observer willing to get up early in the morning, I think that's when the weather is most kind to the observer, in the early morning hours right before sunrise. So you may be treated to a few things that otherwise we would miss. Now, there are other things. I'm going to go ahead and back up the clock here just a little bit to bring us a little bit into a darker part of the evening and bring that Milky Way up just a little bit higher up into our sky. So it looks like I'm going backward in time. Again, my common theme is I'm going to go backward in time to go forward in time. So I'm going to take you to a particular hour. And now, just the view to the south. So this is just a little bit past, actually this is almost 1:45 in the morning. And I'm going to back out the view there. And now I'm going to change the date. So we're going to make this, well, actually we'll leave it the 13th for now, and then I'm going to reveal asterisms across the sky. And this is a neat little trick. I love this aspect of the program here. I must have just got an email. These are representations of asterisms, or interesting little patterns that we see in the sky. And one of the best is in this part of the sky, rising up out of the east. We see what's called here, there's the label of it, the summer triangle. As we get closer, what we should see are asterism lines. There we go. There's the triangle. And the triangle is made up of these 3 very bright stars that are part of, well, we've talked about this before, but it's made up of the 3 constellations that we see here. It's the Harp, Lyra, Cygnus, the Swan, and Aquila, the Eagle. And in each one of those constellations, the brightest stars, the alpha stars, make up what we call the summer triangle. Vega in Lyra, Deneb, we'll get a little bit closer, there's its name, Deneb in Cygnus, the Swan, and Altair in Aquila, the Eagle. Now this makes up what we call the summer triangle, and if I get rid of the artwork there, you can see that this triangle sits on a really prominent part of the Milky Way galaxy. In fact, this bright region right here is sometimes referred to as the star fields of Cygnus, and as we get closer, you can see there's just a lot of stars. Now, these lines are here to illustrate what we call asterisms, or familiar patterns or shapes. And so what's interesting is that Cassiopeia has this familiar asterism in the sky that's sometimes referred to as the M or the W. And so the asterism is this letter. It's the M or the W. But here, we've got another little asterism of stars, and they don't call it the mini W or the mini M, they call it the mini Cassiopeia, because now we associate that with this particular shape. So mini Cassiopeia found within the summer triangle, these patterns, again here's another one, in Cygnus we call this the Northern Cross, there's its name. So there's a lot of little asterisms in this area. Now the reason why I bring this up is because on June 13th, actually this is what I wanted to do was change the date, so I went backward in time. Let's go ahead forward in time now. I'm going to go ahead and go forward by 1 day. So on June 14th, we see here in the same part of the sky, now we could pull back out so you can see where we're looking, into the east, rising up out of the east is this prominent summer triangle. Within the triangle, as we get a little bit closer, we see this thing called the coat hanger. And as we get closer to the coat hanger, you see this thing called Pallas. Well, specifically to Pallas, but Pallas is an asteroid. Pallas is another name, if you didn't know this. Pallas is another name for Athena. So Pallas here, at one point, it was almost believed to be a planet. And there you could see, we got a beautiful representation of the coat hanger. That you can see why they call it the coat hanger, because it looks like a coat hanger. In any case, this coat hanger provides an excellent signpost to find Pallas. Let's say, for sake of argument, you're driving down the road and you're desiring a hamburger. Well, you might say that a useful asterism to find a hamburger on the side of the freeway are these giant golden arches. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily your favorite brand, but you could see that there's a visual association, the M And that's why brand association is so important, because you associate that symbol with the thing that you want. Here, this asterism is our signpost, and it connects us, temporarily anyway, to a dynamic object moving through our sky. And if you didn't notice, that name seems to be clicking. It's because Pallas is an asteroid that's moving. And in the context of the view, now, let me explain something, because a lot of us will wonder, can you actually see Pallas? Yes. With a telescope, you can see Pallas. With a pair of binoculars, this thing is about magnitude 8.9, which means, and under dark skies, you can see magnitude 10 objects in a pair of binoculars, depending on its aperture. So the challenge here is you want to go somewhere dark if you only have a pair of binoculars, but with a telescope you should be able to see this. And watch as Pallas slowly drifts through this part of the sky, passing right by the coat hanger as a useful signpost, visual signpost to find this. So as we zoom in, now under a really powerful magnification, you could, I'm going to actually lock in on Pallas. Where is it? There it is. We're going to lock in on it, and then we get a sense of its motion as we make time go by a little bit quicker. Now you can see it's kind of moving. This thing's moving around 14 kilometers a second through the sky. Now, in its orbit, I should say. Through the sky, it looks like it's not moving at all. Kind of like watching your fingernails grow. But if you look very closely, and I'm going to increase the ticking of time one more. There we go. Now you can really see it's ticking by. And the minutes are going by, and as we pull further out, we're just switching over the meridian there. That's why it kind of flopped in our view. As you can see, there goes satellites whizzing by. I'm going to pause time here because we're getting close to the sunrise. As you watch, what we've done is we've drifted. As we were looking, it shifted across the meridian, and that's what that switch was. But at the time, you could see that Pallas was drifting slowly past. And as you continue to watch, as you watch over time, you'll notice that Pallas appears to be moving against the background stars. And of course, your visual guide all along will be the coat hanger sitting very close by. Now, I think I've run out of time. Let's wrap this up by pulling out of the view. There we go. We've got a lot of asterisms up there. This is June 14th. We're very near the end of our week. And we'll go ahead and just bring this up. We're watching Jupiter and Saturn sink into the sky, and there comes the rising of our sun. And we don't see any of those lines there either. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks again for joining us today, this week, and we'll catch you all next time. Thanks again.